go out and outsource the back office stuff. It'll cost you a penny. It costs you a couple $100. Trust me, you'll make it up in a few weeks because now you're focusing on the business. You're out networking. You're getting more leads. You're making this client happier. You're getting a certification.
Climbing up, there's a struggle, tension in the air. But the underdog prevails, we here to declare. To the top or the mountain where champions stand. Failures can't break us, we taking command. Yeah, it's a journey, climb to the peak. Scaling businesses, who it ain't for the weak. Growth is the game, we play it real tall. From the bottom to the summit, we rise, never fall. Interview the legends, success stories told. Risepreneurs, hearts made of gold. Strategies unfold, in the struggle grace. Hardship and challenges, yeah, we still embrace.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Risepreneur Podcast, a show dedicated to all entrepreneurs and business owners who's looking to grow, scale their businesses, and ultimately exit at the highest valuation. Today, we have a special guest. His name is Feras Alhlou. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's bringing to us his experience of over 20 years. He exited multiple businesses, grew them, and some of them actually to 8-figure business. He's a mentor, speaker, author, and a co-founder of the startup with Feras. Amazing resource. I've checked it out. I look forward to seeing everyone go out there and offer support and gain some knowledge that Feras offers. Feras, say hi.
Hi, Boruch. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. As always, I always like to hear how someone started and how you, in your case, was climbing corporate ladder, end up being a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah. Thank you. Again, really looking forward to this discussion. So I started in my education, it was in engineering. So that's where I started. Actually, I was in Florida, not too far from where you are today. I was on the West Coast, worked for Home Shopping Network to help build their next generation system to press 1 for this, press 2 for that. That was cutting edge at the time. And I was out of college. I wasn't sure. I didn't know, like, you have to work hard and 8 to 5 is not going to get you anywhere in life. I did not know that. And I was doing okay, maybe a bit, not putting as much effort as I should have been. And there was a massive layoff. I think 50% of the company were let go. And I was spared. I was spared by a tiny hair. And that was my wake-up call, I think. Wait a second. And I had a young family at the time. I was married, 3 children. I said, I can't be laid off. I know what is it that I'm going to do. So I started to really work really hard, started to really like what I was doing, shifted from engineering to things that are more people-oriented, account management, project management. And it was really, so I don't want to say that the rest was history, but in terms of that initial wake-up call of, you know what, if you don't work hard, if you don't master your domain, even as an employee, you're not going to go anywhere in life. So that was sort of how it all started in my mind, like working hard, mastering your domain, learning how to do things on your own. Your boss is not going to give you everything you need. And then I'll wrap up here in a second. Then we moved to Silicon Valley with the company. I was promoted and asked to lead 2 offices, one in Silicon Valley, one in Toronto, and got into the startup scene here in Silicon Valley. And then I was laid off for this time. And then I started that first business and I got into entrepreneurship. So that's sort of the beginning of the entrepreneurial journey.
One of the hardest things we know is say no to a paycheck. So what you had in place that gave you that confidence that it's time to do it for myself? I'm done with almost being laid off to ultimately being laid off completely.
Exactly, yeah. It was a very tough market at the time, similar to what we're seeing today. A lot of layoffs. This was after the bubble burst. I couldn't find a job. I was looking for jobs day in, day out for 6, 7, 8 weeks, nothing. And I figured I have to do something. So I spoke with a friend of mine, part of leveraging the network. And I'm pretty sure we'll talk about this later today. And he was thinking of starting a business and he had some resources and I had some resources and I had a lot of time. When you're laid off, one thing you have when you're laid off, you have time. So we decided to give this thing called entrepreneurship a try. And we started a web design, web development, online marketing business. That was 2003 at the dawn of the internet. So we had no idea what we were doing, but we worked hard. And I think in my mind, the first few months of the business, I wasn't sure. I said, I'm just trying this because I had nothing else to do. But I was still hoping that I would get an interview And then I would get a job and I would get the benefits and the 401k plan and all that good stuff. But for good or for bad, I mean, once we had that first sale, I figured, you know what? I can do this. I struggled to get to that first sale. But once we had that first sale, we looked into others' eyes, my partner and I, and said, you know what? We figured it out. We have one sale, small restaurant here, small Greek restaurant in Santa Clara. And I said, I'm not going to look for another job. I know how to do this. It's hard. It's not easy, but I proved that I can do something. And we built on that. But it was initially, Boruch, it was really, I wasn't sure. So I joke around. I tell founders, and I speak to maybe 1 to 2 founders every week. I say, I was forced into entrepreneurship in a way, but if you have time to plan it out ahead of time, if you can think of what you want to do and start your own business when you're not in a critical condition, when you have rent coming up and you don't have an income, that would be a better position. But for me, it was after the layoff and trying my best to find a job, and I couldn't, and then went into it hesitating. But then that was the sweetest moment probably in my professional life. One of the sweetest is when that first sale, when he signed the contract and the owner gave us that 50% deposit, a whole lot of $700 check. That was one of the happiest moments for sure.
Wow. You got that validation that
exactly
told you like, okay, you got something, go on.
And yeah. Like you work with a lot of founders and you help them exit their businesses. There's a lot of inflection points in business, but initially I didn't know how to market. I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know how to deliver. I mean, we laugh about it now, but it took us literally, I think 2 to 3 months to build a 4-page website. I mean, today you can go on GoDaddy and get it up and running in 10 minutes. So we had no idea, and we had to use contractors. But, like you said, the first project, we're able to sell, convince someone, then deliver. They're happy. They're a reference for us. Go to the next client. So that initial validation across every aspect of the business is really important.
That's one of the hardest things to do. I've been involved in over a dozen of startups, and pretty much every one of them failed. We had a couple of exits, but not exits where we wanted to exit. We were kind of forced to exit, and we did not really get what we believed we should have got, and so on. There's a lot of things that I don't want to go too much into it, but the idea is to being a startup, entrepreneurs should get a lot more credit. It's not so simple to say no to a full-time job and actually go struggle, figure it out of nothing, produce something. That's always fascinating to me.
Yeah, I admire those who leave a job, a full-time job, and take the leap. I mean, the courage, the bravery is at a different level. And these days, with the layoffs, I tell people, you can spend half of your day looking for a job, and the other half of the day, because you have time, you can start vetting the idea. You can talk to potential buyers. You can talk to competitors. You can research. I think it's easier that way. But to your point, if you have a paycheck, especially if you have some financial responsibilities beyond the basic needs, if you have a family and aging parents, someone needs your time and support. So there are a lot of things that could potentially limit someone from putting a lot of time into a startup, and you leaving a paycheck and taking this thing. It's hard. So I admire those who do it. And I think my advice to them is look for people who've done it and learn from them. Because you can be, what's that saying I heard recently? I liked, you can, if you're a solopreneur, if you're by yourself, you don't have to be lonely. There are like a lot of resources these days. A lot of people who, I always say, we have one of those principles at Startup with Feras. We say, only seek advice from those who have been to where you want to go. Because there's a lot of stuff on YouTube, as you know, how to get rich quick and become a millionaire overnight and all that, there are no shortcuts to success. But speak with people who, if you're in healthcare and trying to do like a billing system and provide some professional services around it, speak with people in that space. Speak with people who maybe a couple years ahead of you, learn from them, and just go in and do it. It's not easy, but it's very rewarding. I can tell you, I'm pretty sure from the failures and successes you've had, you've learned a lot. That adds to your experience, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I've learned also to not necessarily look at experiences as a failure. Basically, I adopted this idea from one of my coaches that kind of positioned it very well, that makes sense to me and it sits well in my head. Basically, whenever you face a challenge, whatever setback you experience, if your intention from the beginning to go get the experience, you really did not fail. sometimes you
Yeah.
go through that experience and you get rewarded. And sometimes you go through the experience, you don't get rewarded. But you were after the experience all along. So you're not really looking at it as a failure and then build all the discouragement and everything else that comes with it, where people start to feel insecure and looking for the next validation to bring them out of that setback, right? So it's just fall, get up as fast as you can, try again. That's the motto.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. And I think, who was it? I think Damon John, one of Shark Tank, right? He said the two things I could not have been successful without. He said, my mentors and my mistakes. Because without, like, how else do we learn in general? Like I always tell entrepreneurs, to your point, remember the first time you rode the bike, or remember the first time you learned how to swim, or whatever the case might be. We were not born. Well, my teenage kids, when they were teenagers, they argued that they learned how to drive. They were born and learned how to drive. I had to remind them how many hours I had to spend with them, teaching them how to drive. But yeah, it is, there's all these muscles, emotional, psychologically, emotionally, physically, being out there asking, pitching. It's not easy. It's not easy, but you're going to get rejections. It's not if. Not everyone is going to buy from you. So you have to just be out there and learn these things. And like you said, we'll fail, we'll stumble, but you got to get back up.
Yeah. And I like the way you position it. Go for mentorship, but not necessarily to everything that's available out there. Go to someone that already went through that.
Exactly.
Specifically, if it's in your space, it's even better, right? Because the
absolutely.
foundation is more or less the same, but the specifics, that the unknown that could pull the rug from under us, that's where the key is. So approaching somebody who can be a mentor that already went multiple steps ahead prior to you going, it would be very helpful. So
Absolutely.
speaking of which, so I want to dwell on that because you've started, got it profitable, scaled it, and exited multiple times, right? So what I want to do is maybe we can go through the rest of your journey with the other ventures. So how did you scale the first one and exited, started the next one, and maybe along the way share with us what you have learned. The idea here is, what do I need to have in place for me to scale and exit, right? I don't want to find out towards the end, I should have put this in the startup mode. I should have this in place when I just made my first sale. Maybe some gold nuggets that you can share, the learnings along the way that you realized when you were going through every venture of yours. I think that would be very beneficial to our audience.
Yeah, sure. So we are writing a book on this, but it's not ready yet, but there's a lot to cover. But I think the way you framed it, Boruch, is I like it. So basically, you start your business, you have no idea. In my mind, at least my experience and the founders I speak with, it's more like survival. I got to learn how to sell. I got to deliver. I got to make money. I just got to generate revenue. And then later I want to be profitable. And then the profitability could elude you because you're starting to add more expenses. You're hiring people, you're hiring contractors. So getting to profitability, something is sustainable. Hopefully, if you build good reputation, you're getting word of mouth is helping you out now. Recurring revenue is helping you out. But I think initially, I never had this vision that I'm going to grow and sell this many businesses. And we ended up having a business overseas, a sister company, different legal entity. I never thought this would happen. A lot of these things come along the way, and you ended up pivoting. We pivoted so many different times, and we'll talk about it. But I think initially, how do I get to revenue? How do I get to profitability? How do I scale? And I would say there's the initial, you got to go out and sell and get revenue, and you got to learn these things. There's no other way. You just got to go and do it. I think once you've passed those first few clients, or maybe the first year and a half, and you've got some revenue, and now you want to scale. You want to hire people. So I would say there are two. One is a limiting factor, and one is sort of a critical essential. Aside from sort of the vision and being knowing your domain, whatever it is, whatever services you offer. But I think there's a limiting factor, and there's something like you can't do without. The limiting factor in my mind, a lot of founders, they don't set up systems and processes, and they wait too long to delegate. So I'll give you an example. You figure out networking. You're out there once a week and you're getting leads and you're getting to meet people. Some of them are qualified, some of them are not. But at one point, you're putting everything maybe on Post-it notes, in your email, maybe in a Google Sheet, in Excel. at one point, the system that you have or the lack of system is not going to help you scale. So investing in a CRM, once you get, maybe you have, I always say, if you have 50 qualified leads, you probably want to start thinking about the CRM. It could be something simple, but you have to have a system. Task management, counting, right? Like there are all these things that business owners ended up being consumed in and doing things manually and not having processes and systems. When I kick off a project, I should have, whether you use Asana or Notion or Basecamp or Trello, what doesn't matter. Do I have a checklist of things to do after I close a deal? Nothing should slip through the cracks. Now, you might run into new problems. You might have new things that you haven't thought of, but building a repeatable process and a system across the various aspects of the business, I think a lot of founders delay making those investments in time and money. And I understand why, because sometimes money is tight and sometimes they don't have the time. But you got to make time. If you want to scale, you want to grow, you got to make the time, weeknights, weekends, to build these systems and help you really make things repeatable. And that would lead to my next point, which is hiring the right people. But let me pause here and see if you have any comments or thoughts on that.
I do want to share some stuff and ask you. I'm also dealing with business owners that looking to exit, and a lot of them are baby boomers. And it's not uncommon to see them not having any CRM, not even a management system to manage their existing flow. So that to them, it's a surprise. And I understand also they're not necessarily technology savvy. So when you say CRM, you mentioned some of the tools for project management like Basecamp, Trello, Asana. What type of CRMs that one can leverage when they deal with prospects and sales?
Absolutely. And we did, just as a note, we did a 4 or 5 session series, live streams on CRMs, because it's such an important topic in my mind. And we don't have any affiliation, or we don't get any affiliate. We don't get any kickbacks on any of this stuff. But I would say you go from the dominant, Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive, you name it, Zoho, they have a CRM. There's so many. And I think one of the articles we listed top 20 as reviewed by Gartner, the research firm. And in my mind, these days, a lot of these CRMs, the core function for a small business, even like a mid-sized company, they have the core functions. So you start to look for, in my mind, what are your unique requirements? And then maybe find a system that they can meet those requirements maybe more easily. But I think you can go to any one of them. They all have sections for small businesses, editions for small businesses. And it's not about the software, because this is what I highlighted in the series, is that across all systems and software that you end up having to buy for the business, most companies and big companies make this mistake all the time. They invest heavily in the software and they put little time into learning how to use the software, how to customize it, how to train the people on it. And the same thing happens with business owners. Oh yeah, I'm going to get Salesforce and then my sales are going to go through the roof. My friend, no. I tell people, if you use the 80-20 rule or the 90-10 rule, if you invest $1 in a software, then you should spend $9 in your time or someone's time and effort to learn this and master it and create a workflow. So the CRM, the customer relationship management, these systems out there, they help you organize and manage and act on sales data. You'll forget to follow up. You'll forget this proposal. You'll forget that you're supposed to do a demo for this client. And then leads will slip through the cracks. Qualified opportunities will go stale, and you will not be making as much, money as you can. So that's just an example, but even something simpler than a CRM, like you said, like a task management system where you can kick off a project. Here's a task list. And they're very inexpensive these days. Like you start with $20 a month and you get world-class software in a way. So those systems across the board, I think investing early on, I'll just add one more thing. Sorry for a long answer. I was just on a call with the founder and one of his sales and marketing folks. And they were trying to do a report of the last 12 months on how they're doing a summit in a couple of weeks. And they want to evaluate all the leads and the opportunities and where they came from and what is a qualified, which source of effort, networking or cold calling, is bringing us qualified leads. He said it took them forever to create this report, maybe a 50-row report, because at that time they were not using a CRM. I mean, this guy is amazing senior marketing salesperson. And if he spent like half a day or a day to produce this 50-page report, he could be selling, he could be servicing clients and making a lot of money. But if he had used a CRM, the company had used a CRM, they would have pulled that report in a couple of minutes, right?
Yeah.
So that is where the power of systems and power of processes is what enable you to scale, make more money, and then delegate to others so that you can focus on other aspects of the business.
Yeah. Probably also, I'll just add to what you shared. I also see value in, it's not necessarily will automate things for you, but kind of semi-automate, right? You can create workflows that you mentioned, like reminders. Certain things would be changing the ownership, like who would take over from that point. You
Absolutely.
can debrief. There's so much you can do by just looking at the data, segmenting your customers. And there's a lot of opportunities there to get maximum out of your prospects and maximum
Absolutely.
out of your existing customers. Many business owners do not track that, and they just have a lot of opportunity loss, and they're just throwing money away pretty much.
150%. I agree. And you summarize it really well. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, just entering the data. And what I tell people, you can have the fanciest, the most expensive, the coolest software. But if you're not entering data in, and you as a business owner, you have to lead by example. So
Yes.
let's say I have 2 salespeople and maybe 3 or 4 consultants and they're doing customer support. If me as a business owner, I buy this software and I say, hey, go figure it out and let me know how it goes. And then I get angry at people because I don't see data. You have to model that behavior. Go in there. When you meet a client, you go to a network, you went to the Chamber of Commerce event last night. That same night or the next morning before you forget, all these LinkedIn connections or maybe all these business cards that you've got collected, sit down, spend half an hour, enter it all in. It's boring. It's annoying. You got to do this boring stuff. And then when you meet with your own salespeople, your own team, and you show them that you entered this data and then you report on it on a weekly basis, it's just going to, like, the data is going to surface a lot of opportunities. And timing is everything in sale. Like I always say, time kills all deals. So if you don't follow up on that lead at the right time, you're going to lose that deal. So I think getting the software, setting up a process to input data and then report on it, you and your team, it is a day and night. It is a process. It's a new thing that maybe you haven't done before. But once you build that muscle of entering data and reviewing the data and acting on that data, it's going to help you scale, I think, in ways that you could not thought, you could do.
Yeah. So instead of keeping it in your mind, you're keeping it in the system. And I always like to bring the example from sports that you have these amazing teams like Argentina, Brazil, and soccer, right? The players, they get old. Eventually they exit. But guess what? The processes, the systems of how to train an athlete to be ready to go for the championship, it stays within the company. So CRM or some other tool that you're using to manage your workflow basically stays within the company. They don't go home at night. They're basically your equity. So let me ask you. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to ask, as from your experience going through those multiple exits and startups and also mentoring others, do you recommend for business owners to go and initiate everything themselves? Meaning, this is the sales process. Let's go to, let's say, Business Network International, BNI, and Interact Network, collect some referrals. Do you recommend for business owners to go and do it themselves first until they develop a flow, a system, or it's okay to start and let somebody come in and attempt to do it themselves?
Yeah, so at Startup with Feras, we have these, what we call the black belt startup principles. I'm into martial arts. So one of them is we say, learn, implement, then seek advice. So learn, implement, then seek advice. Because if you go to, hey, I want to get a CRM, let me go on Google and search, right? Whoever has ads, it's going to pop up, right? But my recommendation to business owners, and I think I practice what I preach, is you have to tip your toes. You have sometimes to go knee deep in certain things, depending on the stage of the business. Early on, if you don't go out and do sales, if you don't go out and market, if you don't go out and network, and if you have no sales background, like in my case, when I started, how are you going to discern the right person to hire for sales? And I speak from experience because I made all these hiring mistakes that you probably teach entrepreneurs about now, Boruch. So we ended up at one point, we're doing okay with sales, and I wanted to expand and go to sell to like larger businesses. So I figured I'll bring in a seasoned salesperson, but I never kind of pitched and sold to these bigger businesses. And we end up making a very costly mistake. We paid thousands of dollars a month for this salesperson. 3 months later, and zero qualified leads. And we ended up asking him to leave. I'm not going to put all the blame on him. I think some of it on me for not vetting properly and making sure he's the right fit for us. I think he could have done a better job as well. But the idea is, if you don't do things yourself, how are you going to know whom to hire for it, right? So I think it's really important to do yourself and learn, and then don't get stuck in there, right? At one point, you have to be able to step out of it, get a contractor, hire part-time if you can't afford to hire full-time, and potentially maybe outsource to an agency, right? So like search engine optimization. I don't recommend, unless like you're a marketer and you know SEO really well, I don't recommend you go into it. We used to sell SEO as a service a long time ago. Now in this startup and this other company I'm also involved in, we hire agencies to do SEO. And we know, me and myself and my business, we know SEO really well. But it takes years to master. It's really hard. Things are changing every other day. So learn a little bit about SEO to understand the importance of keywords, content, relevant, fresh content. You can't just copy and paste. You can't go to ChatGPT and ask it a question and then put it on your website and expect results. So learn a little about it so you can vet the right agency, and then you can support the process, because the agency is not going to do everything for you. You still have to think of great content ideas. So to summarize, I would say learn, implement to a certain degree, and then seek advice, get contractors, hire for it. So that is typically the way we go about it. If you're like at a 50% company, obviously you're going to delegate some of these responsibilities to your staff. But yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. I totally agree. And from my personal experience, I've kind of seen the same thing. And I'm thinking now also, how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So it's not just relates to sales or marketing. It's the same way it goes to your legal side of things, your financial side of things. I'm looking at the financials right now of companies that are over $1 million in revenue and been in business 10, 15, 20 years, but financials are a mess. They cannot even read their own financial statements and just delegating my accountant, my bookkeeper, but they're not necessarily providing you what you want to see. So know enough for you to qualify who's doing that for you. And it's not complex, I guess. So also, if you think about it, you can always hire a consultant, a third party, to help you delegate it, and then explain to you why delegate it to that individual, maybe what type of KPIs you would want to see for you to understand that the resource is providing you exactly what you need to take your business to the next level, right? So it's not something that you need to spend years on identifying, figuring out, learning, implementing.
No.
So it's just enough for you to be able to understand what you're dealing with.
Absolutely. And these days there's just a lot of resources. And I joke with some of the younger folks, and I said, in our days, like 20 plus years ago, there weren't a lot of resources accessible. YouTube wasn't a thing at the time. And it was hard. You have to go to in-person training for 2 days to learn about certain. Now, I think the opposite. There's so many resources. It's going to be confusing. But that's not an excuse. You still can find good, trusted resources out there to learn accounting. I mean, I can talk about accounting for a day. But if you are in 7 figures, or if you're even in 6 figures and you are doing your own accounting, I think that's another limiting factor. Some of these back office services, my friends listening, guys and gals, go out and outsource the back office stuff. It'll cost you a penny. It'll cost you a couple $100. Trust me, you'll make it up in a few weeks, because now you're focusing on the business. You're out networking. You're getting more leads. You're making this client happier. You're getting a certification. These are the core things for the business, as opposed to you staying, up late at night and getting frustrated because you can't reconcile something. And guess what? And you just said it. When they want to sell those businesses, when accounting is a mess, it's going to take longer. You have to pay someone to fix it for you, fix it like not under the table, to make sure the numbers all align. Yep. But also it could impact your valuation. It could also, like, the lack of confidence in your ability to manage a business. People start thinking like, what is he hiding? What is she hiding? So that's another thing. Like, it's not about buying QuickBooks. It's about having someone, your bookkeeper can do a fantastic job. Pay them a couple $100 a month initially. As you scale, they'll scale with you. And you can outsource all this. There's just this idea of me knowing everything and doing everything is a big limiting factor to growth, as I said earlier.
Yeah. And it's also kind of, I guess, tough for some entrepreneurs, especially if they've been working for someone for some time. They were specialists in something, and that's why they decided to start something of their own. Here, they have to now become more of a generalist. I need to know a little
Yeah.
bit of everything, every aspect of the business, just to bring the right resources and tools, processes for me to manage the whole thing. And again, numbers, right? We always want to use numbers as a reference, point of reference. So what
Yeah.
works, what doesn't work, what you should continue, where you need to double down, and so on. We have kind of in business two main things, right? Sales, marketing, attract and influence, and then deliver on that promise. Right. So operations. So you touched on and brought very cool points, and it doesn't matter whether you're a startup or not, having CRMs, having the management system, kind of a back office tools that help you with attracting and closing business. What are the next things that you would say? You're bringing that revenue. Now what?
Yeah. So that the first one is about systems and processes. The second one is about people. And we spend most of our waking hours at work. Even if it's virtual, you still with people, right? So across all these businesses and all the founders I speak with, at the end of the day, I think business is about people. And now if you're in the services industry, then that's even more important, because you cannot not smile and claim to be in the hospitality business and then expect people, if you're a waiter, waitress, expect people to tip you well. It just doesn't work that way. So I think another area where it's challenging, for founders, is to find the right person to hire, like your first hire, your second hire, the initial set of hires. I think I forgot who said it. Like your first 10 hires will set the trajectory of your growth. And we have another black belt principle now is A people will bring you A people, and then B people will bring you C people. And I've heard this from others. I've seen it in my own businesses in Silicon Valley, where here, in tech, companies they pay top engineers proportionally, like higher than they would pay an average engineer, because their throughput, their ability to just deliver is at a different level. So for founders, I think finding people who will really drive this business, whether it's a salesperson, a marketing person, a delivery person, you want to be able to delegate to them and feel great that they will take care of your clients if they're on the delivery side. And I think it's important for founders to document not just the job description. That's important. A lot of founders, I help some nonprofits, and I went to a nonprofit and, pro bono, and they said, how can I help you? Oh, we're looking for an executive director. Okay, what do you need? I don't know. We just need an executive director. My friend, it doesn't work that way. List what you need, because there are gazillion executive directors. And this is a pretty established startup, $1 million in revenue, donations and all that. So you need someone who's going to be, for example, like community facing, again, in the context of business, you want someone, if you're looking for example, your first consultant who will be delivering the service. Let's say you're great at sales and you're out there selling and you're struggling with delivery. So you want to find someone. I would say your first hire is almost like a business partner. So some people, and we haven't talked about partnership, but you can sometimes, if you're strong in sales, you can complement your skills by having a business partner who's really good in delivery, and vice versa. And if you're a solopreneur initially and now you want to hire, then those first hire is really important. Make sure there's some chemistry, someone you enjoy having dinner with, someone who shares the same values. Like, for example, like responsiveness. If you're just very responsive to client, let's say you're really very growth oriented and you don't mind putting the time and the hours. So I would say, in addition to the technical requirements that you expect of a person, delivery, client management, consulting, what have you, also there's the alignment on values. And this is harder to detect and interview for. But I think the more you can be explicit about it, the more if people are referring people, especially initially, like word of mouth, even in hiring is big. Like finding people who are going to be there with you and who are, you trust and they trust you. And of course you have to take care of them. We'll talk about that later. But I think having the right people on the bus, as Jim Collins said in his Good to Great, famous book, like having the right people on the bus is really important. And then you have to delegate to them. As a founder, just like with systems and processes, you have to delegate, you have to trust. You might have to do a lot of hand holding. They're like, maybe don't have a lot of experience. Maybe they're young graduates. But yes, invest in that time, a lot of hand holding. It will pay off, I think, handsomely for business owners.
Yeah. Yeah, look at that hand holding more. No matter how good you are, it doesn't matter. You bring Messi to your team, that the great individual need to know how your values work, what your people value, how your tools work, how you delegate, how you work together. So that initial stage of kind of micromanaging, it's not really micromanaging, it's making sure that you're the right fit in terms of values, then I can let you go, and so you would continue. So what are some of the things that you go through? Before I do that, let me just summarize to make sure that our audience is on track with everything. Just like with customers, clients, we going out to sell, we need to know who we're selling to, who's our ideal client, who's our avatar, right? So who's our A client. The same thing would be applicable with our teammates, right? We might work with somebody who's A employee, B employee, C employee. So ultimate goal to have all the A players in your team, because A players operate on A level, and they also refer other employees that on that level as well, right? So what are some of the things that you do at the time of recruitment to qualify somebody, to understand, okay, in front of me sitting A player, right? It's not just hard skills that they've done. What are the things that you look at or assess that tell you that, besides the responsiveness, you said also growth orientation, what are the things you look for to qualify someone?
Yeah, and this is a good point, and it's some of these things are hard. It's hard. It's easy to quiz someone, vet someone technically. Let's say you're looking for someone who will do HTML for you, and if you're a whiz at HTML at coding, you can quiz and ask them tough questions, and you can have them go to a specific website and take a test. If you're in finance, whatever, if you're in, you can assess the technical aspects, I think, very quickly. The other things, the more the personality, the mindset, even soft skills you can assess fairly quickly, like communication, articulation, things they've done, in not in the course of their business, things they've done, at the personal level. But I think the other ones are harder to vet for. So initially, I would say, if you can get the first set of employees through your network, so you get people who know you, people who would only recommend the great people to you. I think that's something we underutilize our network, I think, all of us. So I think that would help, I think, reduce some of the risks involved in hiring someone you don't know. I think the other one is don't rush. I would say, people say hire slow and then fire fast, and there's different iterations. I would say don't delay hiring. If you need to hire, make that decision to hire. Do take your time in the hiring process. So maybe if they're local, go out to dinner with them and see how they treat the waiter or the waitress, right? Maybe, spoke with references, although people are going to give you references who will say great things about you. But I've seen some really advanced systems. I was asked to be a reference for a friend of mine. I think he was working for Zapier. He was applying to work for Zapier, and they sent me this link to this system. I forget the name of it now, but it was pretty involved. It took me about 30 minutes to fill out all the questions, and they asked you it was some multiple choice questions, some
open-ended.
Describe here's some 20 attributes, like the top 5 this person excels at, the top 5 they don't, and then if they run this by 5-6 people, it's hard to doctor the data, So I think although this might sound like an overkill, and I think most people are very believing, we believe in people, yes to all of that. And maybe I fall on that side of the aisle. I'm more like of a believer, but you have to vet properly and thoroughly. And I think in that process, as a founder, you want to sell them on the vision. I think it's important for them to understand what you're trying to build, or what is it that you're building, and where you want to take this, and you want them on this journey. And I think it's very important for you to articulate like how you see them contributing to this and what you expect of them. And at the same time, you got to treat them well, and you got to make sure that they're compensated well, and that you take care of them, you respect them, and all that good stuff. And the challenge here is money is going to be tight initially. And to attract, people will say, I've been asked this question, well, top talent is going to be expensive. So I don't think you can compete on money in most cases initially. So you have to compete on something else to win this candidate. So maybe they can go elsewhere. I mean, someone out of college, they're probably just looking for a good job and okay pay. But if you go into someone who's maybe been around 5+ years, now money is still important, but also what is it that they're working on, the people they work with, the respect, the growth in their career. Maybe they were an independent contributor, now they want to be a manager. So if you can address the 5 or 6 other areas, not just the financials, and make it like compelling for them, and all of these other areas are under your control, you might, in a lot of cases, you'll get, I think, the right person. And they will, they'll get to know you as well. And they'll, especially if they're making a, switch from a bigger company, maybe they're moving same pay, but they're just sick and tired of working for a bigger company. They want something where they have more space to innovate, right? So those are some of the things that worked for us in the past. Is you have to compete on something. I mean, and now it's a dry market. Maybe there are a lot of candidates out there, but when it's a hot market, even it's going to be harder. But there's something unique about you as a founder. There's something unique about your business, and you should be able to tell a compelling story to get the right talent in.
So just to summarize, the importance of having a clear vision, because you will be sharing that with your new recruits, right? Understanding your own strengths and weaknesses and your core values, what's important to you. You got to make sure that whoever you're bringing in, they value the same things. It's as important to them as to you. And you mentioned something, I don't know if everybody caught it or not. They need to be excited about your vision, meaning the way I understand this, it has to be their desire as well. A lot of employees, they go to work for someone. It's not because they excited about the vision necessarily. They just need to pay their bills. So now they're going against their will and engaging their discipline and their willpower to go work for you. But that jar depletes, willpower depletes by the end of the day. Yeah. But somebody comes to you and comes from the desire perspective, they're not necessarily engaging as much willpower because they do something that they admire. And they know also the way you structured the benefits, compensation, potential future. They actually see how through their actions, they're getting closer to that. That would create even a bigger desire and excitement about sacrificing their extra time, right? You said growth-oriented people go beyond 9 to 5. Yeah. They put themselves out there because they know that the reward would be much greater. So it's not just, let me just wait until 5 o'clock and punch out, right? I cannot wait for Friday. So
no, exactly. And it's, I think for business owners and founders, like you have to also be out there. If, for example, when I go to networking events, and I always say, only great things come out of networking events. You're going to get leads. You're going to potentially find suppliers and partners. And potentially you can find your next hire. I've hired some amazing people that maybe I knew online, or maybe they worked for a competitor. Like one person, John, I met him at an event, industry event here in San Francisco. This is many years ago, 2013, I think. And he was relocating to Ohio to be close to his parents. And this is before COVID, this is before remote was a thing. And he was leaving a very nice job, high paying job to move elsewhere, again, for a good cause. And at the time I said, hey, John, man, and I knew him just through his contribution on some of the forums in our industry. And he was like very helpful. So me and my business partner and one of our team members, like we knew him just online through his contributions. We thought highly of him. So I said, hey, John, I said, if we were hiring, I would give you an offer right now. And I said it sort of semi-jokingly, like I meant it. And we did not have an opening. So I went back to the office. This is a real story. The next day, and just chatted with my business partner and my colleague, and I said, hey, yesterday I was at this Digital Analytics Association event, and I met John, and he said, you're out of your mind. We got to hire him. I said, folks, we don't have the budget, and he's going to be in the middle of the country and remote. I mean, again, remote wasn't a thing at the time. And let's talk to him. So I reached out, and he's a really nice person up front. And he said, hey, Feras, why are we talking now? Last night you told me that you don't have an opening. Like, he was so open about it too. Like, he's looking after my business. I said, well, hey, you know what? So he came in to meet with us we were in the other part of town, and he didn't have a suit, a tie. He didn't have a resume. We chatted with him, spent half a day with him, have lunch with him. And we figured, I said, hey, John, if you can get 2 internet providers to give you internet, so this way we were always connected, then we can work things out. And we ended up offering him something high for us, but lower than what he was making, but it worked out for everybody. And this is one specific example. And he ended up being an amazing senior contributor to us all the way till we sold that business. And we took care of him. He took care of the business. But this being out there, networking, and knowing who the players are in your space, knowing the good people in your space, and you also be having a good reputation, even among your competitors, trust me, that will get you traction, will get you also not just clients, but also get you potential employees.
Love it. Fascinating. And what made this a reality, also going back to having tools, right? Being able to have systems and processes in place that somebody even remotely can produce value. So they don't have to be physically in the office with you in order for them to interact with you to produce the value. I'll
build. I know we spent time on this, but if it's okay, let me just build. So what happened? So we have our first remote employee, our most senior technical person, and I think there were like maybe 12, 13 of us at the time. We were doing okay. We started to be a little bit profitable. And another senior person, he also now wanted to leave and move out of the country to also be close to his parents. I'm not making this stuff up. And they're still both good friends, very good friends. And I said, okay. And, we just figured he's moving out of the country. So this is 2013, 2014. I said, okay, man, we're going to miss you. And then my business partner, I said, wait a second, we've got it working for John. If this other person, if he can adjust his working hours and work just a little bit, there'll be like maybe 3-4 hours of overlap with us, then great. And they have internet there. And guess what? We ended up working something out with him. And he also became a senior team member, stayed with us through the acquisition. He's now a senior director at the company that bought us in 2019. So this is all, Boruch, before.
Yeah.
We were, I think, one of the few companies. Basecamp was one, Zapier is one, where we had, and then we built from those 2 experiences, we built a fully remote business, business environment. And we stumbled a little bit initially, but then later we did it with intentionality. And then we ended up getting amazing talent from anywhere in the US and Canada. And we built a production center overseas, awesome. All from trying something new and taking a risk and having a good network. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I can relate totally because my background is also technology. I was a web developer for 15 years, transitioned into lead generation, went into business, different startups, and ultimately got exposed to processes. I realized that I don't know anything about sales. So similar journey that you had, and to me was even now like one of the first things I see in businesses that looking to exit, I'm like, your back office. Why do you need all these physical people? Your whole back office should operate from anywhere. Front, maybe you have a storefront, you have people on the floor dealing with the physical people, but your back office, your tools, your everything, those should be operated remotely, and it's tremendously cut down on expenses, and you're producing so much more value, and you avoid so many implications by having everything operated remotely. Doesn't matter if there's a disaster or anything happens, you can open location pretty much anywhere and still
Yeah,
operate. So
absolutely. Very spot
yeah,
on.
I want to my takeaway from networking, amazing idea, right? So a lot of us looking on Indeed or Upwork or some other network out there for new potential hires, going to networking events and actually not looking at those people that you would collaborate, actually looking at them as potential employees, looking for someone transparent with integrity, outgoing, producing value, a giver, fast, right? Wow, I would want somebody of that caliber in my team. So just
Absolutely.
it's an eye-opening thing. Thank you for sharing this. This is pretty awesome.
And how they treat others who are,
Yeah.
how to say it politely, below them in status or whatever it is, like how they treat others is an indicator. And how they talk about others, there's just things you pick, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, those in-person interactions, I think are the best places, to find
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, like that now it's not just networking, it's also conferences, anywhere you go, right? Business cards that you collect. Look at all of because they work for somebody, unless you're talking directly to the entrepreneur himself, a founder. All of those people could be potential employees. You never know.
Absolutely.
Be
Yeah.
open-minded.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. People is the next thing that you're focusing on, making sure that you're bringing A players to be a part of organization. What's next?
So what I think the other thing I would say here is that, let's say with what we've discussed so far with this formula, we got to $500,000 in sales. Let's say we hit seven figures. So I always tell founders, what got you to maybe 500,000 will not get you to 1 million, and what got you to 1 million will not get you to 2 million, right? And then what once you get into maybe mid seven figures, getting to 8 figures is a different ball game, right? So you have to, I think, at that point, I think start to see the different factors. For example, from a business model perspective, you might want to specialize now. You start, maybe if you start too early, riches in the niches, as they say. I believe in that. Initially, maybe you start broad, but at one point, maybe you become, especially in the services business, you become the go-to person in a small niche. I think that will start to get you higher hourly rates, get you better and maybe bigger clients. So looking at things from a business model perspective, the things you can do, how do you stand out in your industry? How do you become, for example, have all the certifications, you and your company and your team? What worked out for us in different phases, when we got into online marketing, we became certified with Google on paid search on Google AdWords at the time, Google Ads now. Later, when we further, so we went from web design to marketing, pivoted, built a business, sold it. Then we focused on analytics and became one of the Google certified partners. There was maybe a handful, 200 of them globally. And then later we became a top 3 or 4 reseller of that software globally. So it took a lot of time to invest in that relationship with a manufacturer or a in the case software a producer in that case. So I think finding potentially, like business wise, I think looking for ways to niche down. And there's a great book on this called Niching Up by, I think, Chris Dreyer. I read it earlier in the year, shorter book, full of, I think, gems for those who want to niche down. So I think that those like business model, obviously look at the trending industry. Like you don't want to be in an industry that's trending down. You want to, I say, riding the wave. like this is all to do like with market and what you're working on and like AI is everywhere today. So if you are not, and we're not going to go into debate whether AI is going to replace us or not, that's a different podcast maybe, but I think what's going to replace you is not AI, is someone else, your competitor who's using AI more than you are. And there are ways to do it responsibly, not just, again, copy and paste text and put it on your website. But are you using UI? Are you using AI in your systems, in your processes to do things more efficiently? And then are you including AI in your product or in your services? For example, we talked about CRMs. If you go on all these CRMs today, like all their front page, AI enabled CRMs. So I mean, some of it is just some marketing, embellishing, but it's true. Like now they can surface things for you to maybe a custom message that you can send to the lead based on the history of the lead. But you as a service provider, as a smaller mid-sized business owner, like how can you leverage technology? How you can ride the wave? How you can be in an industry that's trending up? For example, one of the fastest and growing industries will be the fastest growing industry would be anything to do with, excuse me. Sorry about that. Anything to do with home medical care. We have an aging society. We have an aging population. There's shortage in elderly care. There's a shortage in medical home care. So if you have some experience in that field, it's going to grow much faster than anything else. And add some automation to it, some AI to it, right? So I think those are things you have to look, knowing the industry, getting the certifications, finding a partner, that will give you leads. Like in our case, once we became a certified Google partner, we were listed on their portal, so we got leads that way. So those, I think, things are good from a business model perspective. How do I stand out? How do I become known in the industry as the go-to person for this? No matter what the space is, no matter how crowded, I think you want to be really, you want to stand out, especially in services. I think that's that's going to be key, I think, to growth. There are things that you can do internally, we can touch on in a bit, but that's kind of from a market positioning perspective, from a product and service, from connections and having these partnerships. I think that's going to be really, I don't want to say critical to growth, but that will really accelerate, I think, the growth.
Would you say it's also includes in that, I guess, journey progress, niching down, like identifying, okay, what's most profitable for me? 80-20 rule, right? Again, comes in. What 20% of clients bringing 80% of revenue? Can we niche?
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, like focusing on that and then identifying, is that a growing trend, like what you're mentioning? So it's not necessarily going into a different niche. It's still within the space that you're servicing.
100%. So what got you here will not get you there. So you look at your clients. So when we were doing web design services, we built a nice recurring revenue stream from packaging, repackaging, hosting. Again, this is all 15 years ago. This was all like cutting edge. So we would buy like hosting for $25 a month and sell it at $100. And there's literally nothing for us to do, but we would know how to contact the company if there's an issue. But $75 a month, if you have 50 customers, that's not too shabby of revenue, right? That's just recurring for doing very little work. So at one point, we had to let go of this revenue stream because we were starting. This is when we shifted from working from small businesses, your local dentist and your local restaurant and your local company. When we got the certifications, we started to get leads from mid-sized companies and later from Fortune 100, 1000. Eventually, we were so fortunate we got into the Fortune 50. But that transition from small businesses to mid-size and Fortune 1000, then we had to actually let go of this. And I found friends and competitors in the space, and we spoke to the clients, and we did it in a very graceful, very, very, very smooth way. Hey, folks, we're getting out of the business. We want to make sure you are serviced properly. I'm passing you on to a friend of mine. And we pass on, tens of small clients. And I can tell you, Boruch, that this also, the universe works in amazing ways. And the leads and the referrals we got from those friends, wow. We did not charge any money for them. I mean, I'm going to give you a client, give me $100. We didn't do any of this stuff. These guys are and they send us leads, qualify these over time, that out, performed or brought us more revenue than we had given away. So it was really hard for me to let go of revenue, but you don't want to be, what's the saying? You don't want to be penny wise and dollar foolish. Like when I'm getting a client that I'm going to sell a Google Analytics audit for $20,000, like I don't need to worry about $2,000 of some revenue a month that I can just get multiple of for the, so those are, I think, pivoting, like niching down based on the types of customers you're working on, maybe in the same vertical, but you know what, I have enough, like my muscle now is strong. I have the processes, I have the name in the industry, I have the case studies, I have the references. I can now move to, with the same vertical, I can go to larger clients.
Graduate.
So that would be one way to niche, not just maybe on a specific service, but even like to your point, to the client size.
Yeah, awesome. Feras, looks like we're going to need another session because there's still a lot of questions we can cover. How about doing part 2?
Sure. Yeah. We're happy to chat with you.
Yeah, because we got close to 1 hour. We want to keep the sessions at 1 hour. As the last words before the next session, something that you want to mention to the audience, and also mention how they can find you and what you're looking for, and we'll include that in the description below this video.
Yeah, I will. A lot of thoughts. One is for those who have started their businesses already, and maybe they're struggling. They're making it, but it's a struggle. And maybe those who want to exit for whatever reason, maybe retirement, or maybe they're just sick and tired of it. I mean, don't give up. It's hard, and maybe you put your blood, sweat, and tears into it. I get it. You put maybe some of your 401k in it. I've done some of that. It's entrepreneurship is 5 times harder than we think. So examine, I think, if you're struggling today, you're barely making payroll. You have to tap into your loan or your line of credit, every other payroll. I think sit down and examine and be very objective. You don't have to hire an advisor for this. Sit down, go online and see, like, how do you do a quarterly assessment or an annual assessment? And we have some free content we did it at the beginning of the year on how to look at the last year and examine every area of the business and see what's working well and what you're struggling in, and include your team members in this, and talk to others before those sessions. Talk to your competitors. A lot of competitors are nice people who would actually help out. I've had amazing advice coming from competitors, and I've obviously reciprocate and do an honest and objective assessment of the last quarter, the last 6 months, the last year, and then be committed to make improvements and work maybe a little bit harder, just a little bit, like another 5 hours a week, another 10 hours a week, one less hobby, one less Netflix series, maybe being judgmental here, but just give this business the attention it deserves. And no one guarantees success, but you will significantly increase, I think, your chances of succeeding if you do this personal reflection, business assessment, identify things and go out and improve it. And yeah, so that would be my thought. Just I hate seeing people failing and struggling. And I do, in terms of people reaching out to us, we do have this Ask Feras offer on our site. No gimmicks, no jokes, no, we're not pitching anything, but so many people help me along the way. So I have a few slots every week where people can just go on my Calendly and select 30 minutes, and I chat with them, hopefully provide good guidance, point them in the right direction. Sometimes just hear them out because they're frustrated, and amazing feedback from those sessions. So you can go on to Startup with Feras, Feras. That's my first name, how it's spelled, and go on Ask Feras and get a free consulting session in a way. We do have a daily advisor newsletter. Sign up for that. We are launching actually a program, online program, coaching and training with a course, material for those who are struggling and those who want to start a business. So we have a lot of resources, and of course the YouTube channel, Startup with Feras. We're about to get to 6,000 subscribers. So a lot of great content, I think. And so if you like it, subscribe and hit the like button, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. You do have a lot of resources, and people surely can definitely benefit. Yep. We'll include those below. Let's stop
Thank you.
here and we'll schedule another session. So we'll go for part 2.
All righty.
Thank you, Feras.
Thank you so much.